Hello and welcome to a special presentation on the Salem School District warrant articles that will be considered on March 8th. I'm Marty McHugh, and there are two warrant articles that we'll be talking about today: the operating budget and the 2-year contract with the Salem Education Association. Joining me today to explain these articles are School Board Vice Chairman Pamela Berry.
Thank you for having me.
And Member Bernie Campbell. Mr. Campbell, let's start with you. Next year's budget is about $63.5 million, which is about 2.5% over the current budget. Most of the account lines are reduced from last year. Only student purchase services, maintenance, and debt service accounts have increased, but the board is criticized for the increase. Would you like to address this?
Sure, Marty, I appreciate it, and thank you for the opportunity.
Sure.
As you know, the school district budget's done in accounts, and this year's accounts, there's about 8 different series of accounts. And for the most part, all of those series are down. And there's a slide that we'll be seeing that will show most of those series are down quite a bit. There are only 3 accounts that are really up. One has to do with purchase services in a student service area. One is maintenance, and one has to do with debt service. Now, with regard to debt service, we all know that the voters approved the renovations here at Salem High School. They're ongoing. They're very exciting. It's very visible, and we have students benefiting from them now with the cafeteria and the gymnasium, and we've got the new gymnasium and the auditorium coming online. And so that debt service in and of itself is one of the large areas of increase. The maintenance area, the primary driver on that is like $700,000, $770,000 for the new boilers at the Woodbury Middle School, which everyone agrees are badly needed, and we're looking forward to having that work done. And that there was also some increases in the student service account in what we call inclusion areas. Now, what inclusion area means is that these are services for students with disabilities, challenges in the learning environment, and we're attempting to address those challenges. It's a challenging area to have professionals, and so we've had to increase expenditures there. One of the things when we do inclusion, however, is we hopefully drive down the costs of what we call out-of-district placements, which become very expensive for the district. So we feel the investment in inclusion services for the students will pay off in the long run in the reduction of out-of-district expenses. So that's primarily where we're seeing 3 areas: debt service, the student purchase services, and the maintenance for the new Woodbury boiler. So those are the areas we're talking about.
Okay, all right. And the board proposes a new director for the Performing Arts and the Performing Arts Center. Are those funds still in the budget, and why is the position so necessary?
Well, I appreciate the question, and really in order to answer it, first we need to back up just a little bit. The school board establishes goals each year in late May, early June, and those goals drive what the district does in its initiatives fiscally. Some of the goals that we have established talk about continuing the delivery of instruction, including in non-traditional areas, with priority on literacy and mathematics instruction, and there are budget initiatives that are tied to each of those goals. Another goal that the board has is to continue to infuse technology into every district, in every aspect of how the district operates, not only in the buildings with the students, but also how we interact with staff, how we interact with the public at large. And there are several initiatives associated with that. We can talk about that a little more later, but we have laptops, we have finishing our project for interactive boards in all our instructional classrooms. We have some new technology here for the television studio and how we project out our signal into the world through live stream. So that's another school board goal. We have a community engagement goal that involves us reaching out to the community and getting the community involved. That includes community partnerships, but again, initiatives such as our website, upgrading the way we get news out through Twitter and Facebook and live stream. All of those, that's all tied to that goal. We have some staff development goals that we set each year, and we also had a specific goal, which was to do a comprehensive evaluation of our district's performing arts opportunities. We adopted this goal back in 2014, and that triggered the superintendent's effort to study this intensively. And he convened a group of people, he retained some outside assistance, and out of that study process came a recommendation for the development of a performing arts director. Tied to that, obviously, is the ongoing renovation. You come into the building, you see the skeleton of the new Performing Arts Center going up. That's going to be a beautiful venue, comparable to what we hope will be comparable to many of the venues we have in this area for high schools such as Pinkerton, Timberlane, and Windham. We expect that to be a valuable resource, and we hope to increase the utilization of that resource and bring people into that resource. And so the coalition of these two different themes coming in, the new building and the facility, as well as the performing arts study, which the board studied in a work session about a month ago now, showed us that there's a real need to fill a position which will basically have those two parts. One will be to oversee the theater, the Performing Arts Center, work with groups that will use the theater, recruit hopefully new outside groups to have more varied cultural opportunities for the community. But we're also then looking at how we coordinate every level of the district in terms of our performing arts, moving from elementary to middle to high school, to get people involved in music, to get them involved in theater arts, to get them involved in this kind of production work, to get them involved in vocals. And so this position was recommended by the superintendent, supported by the school board. The budget committee was not particularly supportive of this one position, but thankfully the district deliberative session was. And so that position is there. And again, it's an enhancement of a board goal that's been ongoing now for almost 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned technology, so let's talk a little bit more about that. How has the board accounted for its technology-related goals in this proposed 2016-17 budget?
The board has established, through the recommendation of the superintendent, a system of capital purchases on an annualized basis. And so in a rolling 3-year basis, we look at what we basically call lease purchase agreements. This year's lease purchase agreement funds several levels of technology, including new computer laptops for replacement of some staff level, to replace some technology in some of our labs. We mentioned the whiteboards, the completion of the whiteboard and interactive boards in all of our instructional classrooms. This year's budget will include the last of the facilities in the Woodbury Middle School, so that will be there. We've talked about the live stream technology that we'll be looking at for television to getting out into our community. So there are several initiatives in the budget that support that goal, which is to infuse technology in every aspect of how the district operates. And so we're excited about that.
All right, sounds good. Is it true that the operating budget would be below this year's budget if not for the high school renovation project bonds?
And that is true. The general fund budget, and we're focusing now on general fund budget, the general fund budget is up about 2.5% overall. If you take out the bonds for the Salem High School project, the third bond, when we received, with great thanks to the community, when we received the approval for the high school renovations here, with the state offset of $13 million plus or minus dollars for our total, we were looking at approximately $63 million for the bonds. The school board obviously knew that we did not need all that money up front, and so we divided it into a series of 3 bonds. We have now issued 2 of those sets of bonds. Thankfully, the second bond was actually lower slightly in rate than the first bond, even though we're a year later into it. And we've covered more than 2/3 of the total bond. We expect to issue 1 more bond. This last bond, I think, was around $22 million. The third one's going to be less than 19 to finish it up. And so there'll be 1 more year. This budget that we're now voting on will include anticipated interest, a half-year's interest payment for that third bond, along with full principal for the 2 bonds that we have outstanding now. And so if we deal with just the taking out what was the second bond this year, when that is withdrawn from the budget, our proposed budget is actually a little over $300,000 less than last year's approved budget, even by if we take out that bond amount. So the budget overall is going down. That's a reflection of reduction in staff, the reduction in numbers of students, economies that the administration has recommended to the school board that we've implemented. And so we think we're being prudent and asking the voters to support the budget that we've put forth.
All right, thank you. And finally, I understand that some have been critical about the district's staffing levels. Has the district reduced staff as enrollment has dropped?
Yeah, this has come up, and it came up through the budget committee process. And the short answer is they're making comparisons to a high tide year of 2003, which is just before the Windham departure, when the total district enrollment was significantly higher. And here at the high school, you were here, you know what it was like in those years when you couldn't move in the corridors and you couldn't get anywhere in the schools. And it wasn't just the high school, it was the middle school as well, was vastly overcrowded in terms of staff. So as the enrollment has withdrawn, we've really done two things. One, we have tried to move back to what are more manageable student-teacher ratio levels. And we demonstrated to the budget committee that in fact, in 2003, our middle school ratio was tied for the highest in the state. We're not there anymore, thankfully. But nevertheless, we have been withdrawing staff. We presented some information and some data to deliberative session that shows over the last 3 years, 3 years ago, we reduced staff and focused at Woodbury, and we took out several staffing positions associated with withdrawing one team at the Woodbury school. And obviously, 2 years ago in the budget, we had the issue with the closing of an elementary school through the district realignment. That was a very painful process. The chairman at the deliberative session noted it was one of the most difficult decisions that Mrs. Berry and I and the rest of the board had to make throughout years on the school board to close an elementary school. But we did that and realigned and realized a significant district savings to help offset some of the bond costs for our ongoing renovations. Even the budget that we're voting on now has additional staff being withdrawn. I think Dr. Delahanty and the central office have focused on where we can reduce staffing and still provide the kind of quality education that we expect here in this community. And we have been reducing the staff fairly significantly. People talk about the fact that our staff count hasn't dropped significantly at all over this entire period of time. But when you drill down into that data, Marty, you're going to find out that where we've withdrawn staff, where we see the offsetting increase has been in the special services area, where we have more one-on-one aids for people who are suffering those disabilities, our obligations under IDEA. And so we've seen an increase in that staff. And we know that that group of employees is now our second largest union. And that staff continues to grow as we identify students, as we become more attuned to the needs of those students, as the standards for the kind of education we provide to those students requires us to provide the additional assistance, then we have to do so. But overall, the level of classroom education, teachers have come down as the enrollments have come down, and we've made that point pretty clear throughout the process.
All right, Mrs. Berry, Article 3 is the proposed agreement with the Salem Education Association. Now, how did the sides agree on a 1.7% wage increase?
Well, sitting down during negotiations, we looked at the consumer price index for this geographic area, and we decided that a 1.7 for 2 years, 1.7 each of a 2-year contract was a good place to end.
Okay. The teachers agreed to accept any taxes and fees associated with the higher cost health plans. How would this benefit district taxpayers?
Well, part of the Affordable Care Plan, once a insurance reaches a certain amount, a high amount, there could be fees or taxes associated with taking and choosing those higher cost plans. If any of our employees would pick a plan that would go to that threshold or higher, they will actually be responsible for any fees or taxes associated with that plan, and they will pay for that themselves.
All right. And I heard that this agreement happened pretty quickly. How did you pull that off?
Well, I want you to know that the school board truly appreciates the job our teachers do each and every day in the classrooms with our children of this community. We have a very professional relationship with our teachers. The negotiations were very amicable, and we all understand what the economic climate is like. So I think understanding that our feelings and thoughts were the same, it was very easy to reach an agreement under those circumstances.
All right, and the agreement is Sanbornized. What is that?
Sanbornized is a multi-year contract. It can be 2 or more years. And it's when the contract is presented to the voters and it's spelled out what the costs are for the first year and the estimated costs for the second year. And it's presented to the voters. They vote on it one time, but it does cover 2 years.
Okay. And then just finally, there's 2 health insurance plans that have been closed to new retirees. Why is this a good thing for Salem taxpayers?
Well, those higher cost plans have also been closed to current employees too. So we're hoping to bring in lower cost plans that offer the same type of benefits that the higher cost plans do, with maybe a little bit higher copays. And it is a reduction in the costs of the plans, so it is a benefit to the taxpayers.
Okay, thanks to both of you. And now it's up to the voters. Polls will be open on Tuesday, March 8th from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. I'm Marty McHugh. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you at the polls.